Hey everybody, Mike Pfeiffer with Pfeiffer Hobby Supply. I wasn't really intended on doing a video today, but I was sitting back there staring at the computer doing something, and it popped into my head that over all the time that I've been building model railroad layouts, and I've built probably about 25 or so, there are a few things that I have been very glad that I've done, and I'm going to call them train room essentials. And I'm going to show you today what some of those are, and I'm sure I'll be forgetting some because it's just basically the ones that have popped into my head. But as I think of them, I'll try to add them to the video today. But one thing that stands out in my mind came to my head. So let me get into what I think are essentials you need in a train room. Okay, one of the first things you need, I feel like, in a train room is ample lighting. Okay, in this room here, I've got 4 double tube fluorescent fixtures in here. Now these are not LED. I wish they were. I may at some point change them to LED, but they are daylight bulbs. And I would certainly recommend daylight bulbs in a confined room. It just seems to make the photography and everything turn out better. But you definitely need good lighting. And if it's multi-level, some guys, you know, are doing obviously the LED lighting on different levels and so forth, and that's fine. This does not happen to be multi-level, so overhead light is fine. The next thing is those things right there. I have a swamp cooler that comes in here, can come in here in the summer. I usually block that off. I also have air conditioning from the house. By the way, this layout is in half of our garage. I think most of you know that. But anyway, I did pipe refrigerated AC into the room from inside the house. That has been beautiful to keep the room at a relatively stable temperature. I do not have return air in this room, so any air that comes into this room or heat that comes into this room basically pressurizes the room. And I have found that, I know everybody can't do this, but I have found that that's very helpful in keeping dust out of the room. Let's move on. Okay, the next thing I'd like to show you is in my room, because it's half the garage, and even though I have air conditioning from the house coming in here, and this room is insulated, which is another thing I would recommend, is I have a small refrigerated AC unit. There's nothing like being comfortable while you're running and working on your trains. So I would recommend that, as well as one of those and one of these. A small or large heat source. Here we don't need much heat, and like I say, the house heat does come in here, but it escapes this room pretty quickly. So I do have a couple small heaters in here, and this one is on right now, and I'm just about ready to turn it off. It's just about too warm in here at the moment, and it was 33 degrees outside this morning. So those are a couple of other things I'd recommend, is some nice heating and air conditioning, regardless of whether you get it from the house or not. The one thing that brought all this to my attention is these rubber floor tiles. I decided to put them in the room initially when I did the first ACT in here, and they've been in here ever since. I got these particular ones at Lowe's. I don't remember what the cost was, and I do know that you can get them at Sam's and probably Costco and every place else as exercise mats. And they're not incredibly expensive. I don't know how many tiles are in here, but 2 or 3 packages of 6 or 8, whatever they come in, is more than enough to do my tiny room here. And you really only have to do the area that you'll walk on. But I can tell you from experience here that these about 1/2 inch thick tiles will just save your back, your feet, and keep you from breaking a lot of equipment if you drop something on the floor. So I highly recommend either some carpet. Carpet's not too practical in that if it gets dirty or something, you know, you really got to work at getting it clean. These tiles, if I screw one of these up or I melt one, in fact I have a few that I've dropped the soldering iron on in here that have been melted. Chairs and things that sit on them with no feet on them, poke holes in the stuff. You can see that I've got oil stains down there on them and all kinds of stuff. But when I get to the point where the layout is, the majority of the layout is done, which I'm nearing that point, I'm thinking about replacing all these tiles with fresh tile. It's not a very costly thing and they're very easy to do, and if I fudge one of these up I could always put another one in if I had a couple extra, which I usually keep a couple extra, although I think I've used them all in here. Let's see what else I can think of in here. Okay, I don't know if it's essential, but we'll show this little corner here. I have a little, I don't know where I found this, a thrift store or something. It's a little wall-mounted like file holder, and I keep all my pertinent papers, my Digitrax decoder book, anything that I've installed, the Kato turntable, you know, any piece of information I need is stored right there, so that if I need it, I have it handy. Some people put 110 around the layout and put 110 outlets underneath the layout. I just have this one power strip here that's right at the doorway that I can plug the shop vac into. I can plug soldering irons into. I also have something else I'll show you under the layout in a minute here, but it's just handy to have one out from under the layout to plug stuff into if you don't have access to any wall plugs, okay? Which I don't. The layout goes all the way around the room with the exception of the door. And you're probably asking yourself, and I'll show you real quick, you're probably asking yourself, what's this little box? I found this at a bird feed store. And I don't know, the kids may have left it on. Let me see if I can open the door here and get it to function. When you walk in front of it, it makes a bird sound. It kind of confuses people when they come in and out of the room. They don't know where the bird sound is coming from. I normally have it off because it just kind of irritates me, but it is kind of cool when people visit. Another thing that I don't know if I've covered, but and it's not a necessity per se, and you can see that I have a PVC tube that I keep long stuff in here. I have a moonlight and a sunset light here. While I don't use them very much, it is nice to have them. Those are the two dimmer controls for them, and if you'll let me swing up here real slowly, I know we've seen them before, but while we're covering things that you may plan on, you can see that the 5 light bulbs right there are for the sunset, and those 2 LED bulbs right there are the moon. So that's something you may want to consider, you may not want to. It's not essential, but I thought I'd just show it to you. Now let me swing around backwards here. In my book, there's 3 other essentials right here. One of them is a trash can, and I have my little Santa Fe route bucket that I found years ago that I use as my trash bucket under here. The other thing is a retractable shop light, which I keep under here so that I can take around underneath the layout and plug in soldering irons and so forth. Unless you have a 110 bus line under there or wall sockets, you may not need this. But I find the combination of the plug and the light very handy if I need it. The other thing I would recommend is, if you can, and I needed them here, is the under table lighting of some kind, be it LED rope light like I have here, or any kind of light to supplement working in a particular area, such as my shelving here or someplace where you need that light, and I discussed that earlier on multi-deck layouts. Let me see what else I can show you here. Okay, another thing that every train room needs at some point in time is some sort of stool. I prefer this little plastic one. I don't remember exactly where I got it, and as you can see, it's quite old, but it's incredibly light and incredibly strong and just the right height. If I swing around here, I have another folding one that's metal there that's much heavier. I also store under here a couple of sitting chairs. So if somebody comes to visit, I could throw the chairs out in the garage. If the garage is not too cold or whatever, I can put some chairs out there, allow people's spouses to sit. Some train rooms have couches, chairs, and stuff built into them somewhere. This particular room is too small for one. And as long as we're heading in this direction, there's two more things right here that I feel like have been essential to me. One of them is a kind of a latecomer, and that is this cart. Some kind of cart to carry your materials, basically your scenery materials that you use all the time, is kind of handy when you get to the point where your layout is getting to the finished stage. So in other words, what I'm saying is, you know, I've got scenery on almost everything around this layout right now. There's hardly any place to set anything down. So what I had this cart, actually this cart, and this is probably irrelevant to the conversation, but this cart came from Sweden with Robin's grandparents. And it's just a little serving cart, but I have kept it, and I used to keep it under the layout just to store this stuff on under the layout. But I have found out, because it has casters on it, it's relatively handy to move from one end of the room to the other with these materials on it, so that the materials will be handy to wherever I'm working. I would suggest having one of these. Don't spend a lot of money on it, because it's something you're probably going to get rid of in the end. Maybe not, I don't know. You could still store stuff on it. Even after the layout's done. But it's been really handy in here to be able to move all this stuff around in one bulk sweep. Not that the room's that big, but it's just nice to be able to move it from end to end. One of the last things is these plastic storage bins, and I've covered them before for storing trains, but they're nearly invaluable to put things in. I store cars in them, I store some paperwork in them, I store some transformers for use with lighting. I store the lighting equipment in them. I mean, I just literally store everything in them. I have skirting that goes down over it, but it spends most of its life tucked up out of the way. But the front of these little cabinets, being as I have black skirting, they look good under there regardless of whether they're skirting or not. And these are probably, besides the rubber floor, these are probably the second handiest thing that I have in the train room. Okay, the last thing I have to say about this, the essentials, is one thing that's overlooked on a lot of layouts, and I've overlooked it on several of my layouts. In fact, the last layout just got to be where there could only be two skinny people in here, and as you guys can see, Gavin's not getting any smaller and I'm getting older, but you need room for people. So when I built this layout, it goes around the walls, and even though I could utilize a lot more space, I could bring this face of the layout out further and make a lot more room to do things, and I may very well do something like that in the future, but the idea here was to leave enough room for two people to be back to back in different areas of this room, and of course leaving room for the models and stuff, which you've seen. But the idea was to leave more room for people, because I got so carried away with the other layout that I just squeezed the human factor right out of it, and I think a lot of people tend to do that. But I think in the end, most people will find that being a big mistake. So, I guess that's about all I have as far as essential things. Two other things, I guess if I was going to say something else, two other things that I've found almost critical to have now that I've started doing lighting on the layout One thing is, and I've always had it on my layout, is the ability to turn the entire layout off at some point. This switch over here now turns my lighting on and off, so I don't have to have all the LEDs burning. There's a separate bus line that goes around and feeds the 110 circuit that feeds all the lighting stuff. I can turn all the lighting off and still have the layout on. The other thing that I might say is it's good to have a place to show some trains and keep some trains out that you want people to see that you don't necessarily run. And of course you guys have seen my HO shelving here. It's been here ever since I built the first layout in the room. That's actually a window out of the garage. I put 1/8 masonite finished. It was kind of like the masonite that you put in a bathroom or something that had one finished side on it in like a white. Anyway, I have that white facing out. Then I have a piece of foam insulation. Then I have this little shelving unit that I built here in the window. But these were purchased cabinets. I have a couple inside as well. But it's always nice to have some place to display your stuff. My room is very cluttered with junk that means something to me around the room. We're always going to have something like that in a room. I think it's not, like I say, that's not something that's essential. But I think really those are probably the things that I have deemed most important in any of these layouts that I built, and the things that I've learned that you do need. So I think for today we'll leave it at that. I just wanted to try and bring some things to mind that sometimes people have a tendency not to think about. Okay guys, for today I think that's about it. I have a surprise coming for you in a new update. It has to do with that heat gun right there, or that hot glue gun right there, and something I've decided to do over here, but we'll save that for an update over on the Pfeiffer channel, the Mike Pfeiffer channel, on the ACT update channel. But for now, this video here is going to go, and you'll obviously already know that, but I'm putting it on the how-to channel because there hasn't been much activity over there, and I've neglected doing any reviews or anything like that. So this is kind of going to go under the how-to channel. And so for today, that's probably about it. In the near future here, and this is just for those of you who are watching the how-to channel, I'm also going to have another little surprise, and that is that I think Santa Claus is bringing me an Osmo Pocket 4K camera with a gimbal on it and stuff. And I've got some thoughts and ideas on how to utilize that camera out here in the train room. It'll also have something this camera doesn't have, and that will be a microphone connection, so I can wear a microphone, so I won't have to yell at the camera like I do now. So anyway, look for those things in the future, and I'm glad you stopped by today, and as always, thanks for watching.